in the South. If I'm Kirby and they win this football game, it's like, look, see, do you see what I'm saying? Like, they're not ready for this. Like, this is a new reign. I think you use that. That's what they're going to do. You know exactly what they're going to do.
Hello and welcome to Always College Football. I'm your host, Greg McElroy. It's a Wednesday edition of ACF. It is September 25th. So we are just a couple days away from starting to really figure out what some of these teams are going to do, man. We got Ohio State playing this week against conference competition. We got a top 4 battle in the SEC between Georgia and Alabama. We have Ole Miss being tested for the very first time. Like, we're starting to get in the thick of it, and we're going to have some teams begin to reveal themselves as legitimate contenders, like Tennessee did just last week. So very, very much looking forward to this week's action. And to help us break it down, we're going to welcome in our friend David Pollack, formerly of ESPN, now does a great job on his own podcast platform, David Pollack on College Football. So you can check that out anywhere. So look forward to our visit with him. And we also are going to dive in, like we did a few weeks ago, the top 4 in the Power 4. The top 4 in the Power 4. So the 4 best teams in each of the 4 Power 4 leagues. We'll rank them 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we'll do all of that here on a Wednesday edition of ACF. But we'll kick things off with a great conversation. Even though he's an enemy this week, he's always a friend. It's David Pollack. All right, he is a... Tell me, David, if I'm missing any accolades. I just want to make sure I have them all. A College Football Hall of Famer, former first-round pick, one of the best, I think, analysts in college football in the last decade at least, or more. I don't even know how long. He now is the proud owner and host of David Pollack College Football. You can follow that on YouTube. You can follow that on the podcast platform. Is there anything else? I'm the father of 2, son's a sophomore, good player in his own right, probably better than his old man, definitely tougher than his old man. But I'm trying to, am I missing anything else? Or are we good? I
think you missed the first round flop. I think you missed.
Well, first of all,
lasted 2 seasons in the NFL.
Yeah, circumstantial, not a flop. When your injury to your neck leads to you having to retire early, I would say that that's a little out of your control.
Forget that crap. Listen to this, though. My son's 16, loves football, is ate up with football, and he was like, "Dad, give me some podcasts. Like, I want to know more about college football." And I was like, "Check out Always College Football. You'll love it." Like, it's Greg. He's an analyst at heart. Like, he loves football. The dude texted me the other day a picture of your podcast link, and he said, "I'm 8 deep, and this is fantastic." So we'll give the kudos back to you, brother.
Well, I appreciate it, buddy. Thanks for paying it forward, and I'm glad little man. He's probably not even little man. I shouldn't even call him that anymore. I'm glad your boy is all eaten up with college ball like we are. All right, so what we like to do on our Wednesday show, and I don't know if you've ever seen it or heard it, but our whole theory is we're going to have next week's conversations today. So it's a little hypothetical, but it's also, diving into the weeds some. So we'll do a little bit of everything here. We'll start with the game of the weekend, Bama, Georgia. I happen to think, David, and you tell me, it's a weird situation in which I feel like Bama's playing with house money a bit. And all the pressure's kind of on Georgia because, hey, you had the whole notion like, oh, Saban's there. Saban's the best ever. Well, Saban's now left. And if you get beat by Kalen DeBoer, you can no longer point to, oh, well, it was just Saban that had our number. So what do you think is the reaction for Georgia in the event in which they come up short in Tuscaloosa?
I think you're right because everybody was like, it is Saban, but now it's a new era and it's DeBoer. And if it starts off on the wrong foot, I think Georgia fans know, man, like Alabama's had their number. And the year they broke through and won a Natty, when they played them, they had lost to them already in the SEC championship game. So they still lost to them. But I think Georgia's going to be very interesting to me. Like, their schedule sucks. And we've talked about this all year long, dude. Like, I don't care. The best team in the country, you can give me the best team last year or the last 10 years, are going to lose at least one game with their schedule. So if this is the one you choose to lose, Greg, you still play at Texas. You still play at Ole Miss. You still host Tennessee. Like, so I think this is an important game. Now, listen, I don't think Alabama's schedule by any means is easy, but compared to Georgia's, it's pretty easy. Like, and so I think, where does Georgia get a loss? I think Carson Beck, to me, like, I've seen Carson Beck be better than he has this year so far, and they're going to need him to be great. Slowing down Alabama in this offense that's been pretty historic good is, I think you start to question where they're at, but I think Georgia's solidified themselves at the top of the mountain. I don't think that's going to change, but I think now, if that were to happen, and that's what we're doing, we're picking it, if that were to happen, I think it says a lot about Alabama, and it's going to say a lot about their chances to be right back where they're used to being. And it says Kalen DeBoer's new reign is a lot like Nick Saban's. I think that's a fair assessment if Alabama wins the football game.
And then on the other side, Georgia goes in, beats Bama in Tuscaloosa, a place that doesn't often experience a Bama loss, a program that, well, I think every Alabama fan has the utmost respect for Georgia. They really, I mean, they acknowledge, I think they believe they're superior, but they still very much respect what Kirby's built because it resembles in many ways what Alabama was for many years. So I think there's a mutual respect here, but I also think that Alabama has this internal feel of we own them, right? Like we own them, they're ours. Yeah, they might have gotten us in Indianapolis, but other than that, we have taken care of them every chance we've gotten. So
think about Jalen Milroe on your show.
What's that?
Wasn't it with you last year that he said, like, that he talked about Georgia like we knew we were going to beat him? Wasn't that with you that he said that?
No, I don't believe so. But I mean, to me, I feel like Bama does have a slight psychological edge, to be honest with you. I think it's a real thing. But at the same time, I really look at it, though, and I feel like, well, if Kalen DeBoer comes up short in his first crack at Georgia, does that dispel doubt in Bama faithful? Like, what do you think the reaction should be for Bama in the event in which they come up short?
I think it would, and all this obviously matters how good the game is. Like, if you get beaten a big game bad, like, everybody's going to panic.
If you get smoked in either direction, like the sky's falling, cancel the program, like, yeah, of course.
Pull the ripcord. But I think if Kalen loses – and here's the thing. The question wasn't about Caleb being a winner. Like, we knew he's won at every level of football. You know he's a really good football coach. He knows how to manage his teams. He knows how to coach offense. He's always done that at a high level. I think now you go, okay, how does this reflect recruiting? Because that's the biggest thing with Caleb. Like, in the South, if I'm Kirby and they win this football game, it's like, look, see, do you see what I'm saying? Like, they're not ready for this. Like, this is a new reign. I think you use that. That's what they're going to do. You know exactly what they're going to do. So I think that Georgia can solidify themselves and say, we've won as many natties in the last 2 years as we've lost games. And we just went into Tuscaloosa, and you go, we're still the king of college football. Like, we'll take your questions later and probably be right back to number one in the country.
What about what we're witnessing right now in Tennessee? And I think this one is almost a little bit of a look back because Tennessee is not involved in anything high profile this weekend. But I look at Tennessee, and I know you as a defensive lineman are probably watching that group just rotate bodies in there, and it's like, goodness gracious, did they ever stop? It's like a conveyor belt of pressure that just is relentless. But I also, at the same time, am having a tough time figuring out, like, I think Tennessee's the real deal. But I also think Oklahoma, in many ways, along the offensive line, is real problematic, and I also think the same about NC State. So I think Tennessee's a national championship contender. I said that on Monday's show. How do you view Tennessee at the moment?
100%. They're a national championship contender. And if you look at the rest of their schedule outside of at Georgia, which is not easy, and hosting Alabama, so that would be the two highest ranked teams, they're going to be guaranteed to win. And it's tough to say that because you just saw Georgia, Kentucky, but with their offense and with their defense, like, they're going to have very few off days together. Their defense is legit. And you talk about that defensive line. Greg, I remember watching that NC State game, and I'm just like, okay, 55 comes in. Holy cow. And it's not just guys to rotate in that are big bodies. You're talking about 300-pounders with twitch, 21, 20. Right. And you're just like, golly, this is really impressive. And we knew their offense. And here's one thing I'll say about Tennessee. I don't have any concerns about their front. Their secondary, is there a team that can stay balanced enough to make plays in the back end? And here's another thing, to be fair. I pubbed up Nico as much as anybody. And watching his Iowa game and watching his first game, I'm like, this dude is sensational. He's Heisman Trophy type good. He wasn't great against NC State. He wasn't great against Oklahoma. We haven't even seen the best version of him I think we're going to see down the road. I think that's what's scary. Can he continue to grow before they get to the Alabama game and the Georgia game? Because he's been okay. He wasn't great against Oklahoma. They made some big plays. He had some big misses down the field that I thought he could have really blown the game open and made this thing go away quickly. But so I think I don't question who they are as a team, and they're going to be a great team. But can they beat Bama and Georgia? Like that's what they're tasked to do down the stretch.
Yeah, I really like them. I like you kind of reference with the D line. And I don't know a lot about like defensive line technique. I've never played it. I take that back. I played it, but I was in like 4th grade. And I was breathing fire off the edge, Davey. Like you didn't want a part of that. Like it was absolute heat, like huge first step, like just speed to power. But in all seriousness, like I look at how violent they play and how they strike and shed. Like when I see guys' helmets going back, like Tennessee has done that over and over and over again, regardless of the level of opponent, man. So I'm super impressed with what they got for sure. Did you ever, strike and shed when you were playing?
Yeah, I think you teach that technique to see when you got big fat guys, man, that are way bigger than you. If you hit them underneath the chin, Greg, the head goes back. So like every time, put your head right underneath the chin with tight hands because them boys are big. I love the picture of Greg McElroy rushing the passer in my head because
you don't want to see that.
I just imagine
the Chatsworth Chiefs in Los Angeles, California. It wasn't great. That's for sure. Looking at what's going on at Auburn, and as a defensive guy, you have a scenario right now, and look, the season's at a crossroads. Auburn, this is must win. If they lose this game to Oklahoma this weekend, I mean, you look at their schedule. They got at Georgia, at Missouri. Like they could very easily, we could fast forward, they could be 2-6 before they finally have the schedule lighten up a bit. And that's against Vandy, who's really not bad at all.
No.
So you look at where Auburn's at, and as a defensive guy, when you see quarterback issues on the other side, how do you handle that?
It's frustrating because the bottom line is whether you like it or not, you're going to be frustrated. And when you're on the field all the time, you get worn out. And you can be at your best all you want, but it doesn't really matter. You're going right back out there. Your offense is not only – listen, it's one thing not to play great offense a la Michigan versus USC. It's another thing not to play great offense and donate the football and put you in bad situations a la Oklahoma versus Tennessee. Like, if you can run the football and at least eat clock and at least not put me in horrible situations – that would be one thing. But another thing with Auburn, man, the quarterback play has been bad for a while. Like they've got to find some kind of consistency there. But again, go to recruiting. Auburn's had some success on the recruiting trail, and Hugh Freeze has been able to say, we're building. And this is year 2. Like we're going to ascend. And now when you watch this, I think you're going to have severe doubt in some of the kids that have committed. So I think it's just going to be really hard. Listen, you want to see them fight the rest of the year. I'd love to hear Coach Hugh Freeze be a lot more optimistic in press conferences and a lot more about his guys and try to build something consistent towards the future because right now it's been bad. And it's got to be hard and tough to be an Auburn fan because it's a proud tradition. It's a great fan base, and there's not a lot to cheer about right now.
Yeah, and it is demoralizing to watch. I think they pressed the panic button with Peyton Thorne early. I didn't think he played great against Cal by any stretch, but do I think he deserved to lose his job in favor of what's behind him? No, I don't. Just knowing what's behind him, I think he's the best man for the job. If they want to win games, he's the guy that needs to be under center. Looking at teams that have kind of altered their identity, like forever. And Davey, I'm curious to get your take on this because I have like a lot of theories, and this is probably an off-season conversation, but why not? Let's just have it now. Like teams that traditionally were elite on offense, Oklahoma, I guess you could say USC for the last couple of years, but we're terrible on defense, right? Terrible on defense. Now all of a sudden, the script has flipped at Oklahoma, where they're not very good on offense, but my goodness, their defense is unbelievable. Same can kind of be said for what went down with Josh Heupel in Tennessee. I mean, 2022, number 1 offense in America. Like, yeah, they had some good moments defensively, but I mean, they also gave up 1 million points. They had to win track meets. Now all of a sudden, they're unbelievable on defense, and the kind of the seesaw has gone back the other way. Like, how do you feel about teams that were amazing on one side of the ball and stunk on the other, and then all of a sudden things flipped and changed, and now all of a sudden their identity is upside down? How does that, just what's your reaction to that?
Well, I mean, it's strange, but like Venables makes a lot of sense because of who he is,
Right.
and we talk about Clemson and transfer portal this, transfer portal that. When Brent Venables was there, it wasn't an issue because Venables is an elite coach who brings elite energy and knows how to coach people up. And when you watch Oklahoma, it translates. Like Lincoln Riley finally made the decision to hire a new DC at USC. It's paid dividends. And
Yeah.
last week they busted a little bit against Michigan, but I saw more people in the right spots. I saw less dropping to cover no zones for no reason. I saw more pressure on the offense, better tackling. It's strange, but Heupel talked about – I love what Heupel did the other day in the press conference before the Oklahoma game, and he's pointing out all the great players like Al Wilson and Eric Berry and those guys to try to to try to make it a point of emphasis. Like, guys, listen, this is what it takes. And everybody saw – Bama for years, and everybody saw Georgia in the last couple runs. Like the teams with the complete teams are the ones that win. And that's why before the season we were talking about Ohio State and Georgia and those Texas. Those are the teams you're talking about because you think they're going to be complete. Tennessee, Oklahoma, USC have always been one-trick ponies. And you know what that means? Your margin for error is so small. Look at Michigan right now. Like Michigan's margin for error. I picked Michigan this past week, and I was like, it's got to start great. They got to run the football. They can't turn it over, and they got to play elite defense. Like, that's very frustrating because you ain't going to do that every week. And so when you come into a game and you're Tennessee and you're Lincoln Riley the past couple of years, and I got to go outscore, I have one bad game. And guess what happens? I'm done. So I think recruiting picks up on that side for Heupel. You spend more resources, by the way, now with NIL on that side of the football to make sure that you start understanding that. You bring in new coordinators until you get it right. But, it's complete teams are going to win this thing. The deeper teams are going to win this thing, especially as we go along in the season.
Yeah, it certainly feels that way. I mean, teams are just not deep. I mean, even when Georgia's struggling with depth, you got problems. Like, it's wild to kind of watch, Davey. And you look at the kind of landscape right now. And I don't put a ton of stock into the AP poll. I know you well enough. I know you don't either. There are things about it that I think are important and necessary. Do I care at all where my team is ranked? Or should you care where your team is ranked? Absolutely not. But I'll say this. I do think there is some accuracy in the depth of the SEC at the top. So I look outside the SEC. Let's remove the SEC. Let's remove Ohio State, and let's remove Miami for the moment, because I do want to ask you about them. Is there a team that can win the national championship outside of the group that I just referenced?
That's such a great question because you say win the national championship, not get to the playoff. Because like Utah is going to go undefeated, I think. Like they host Iowa State. They're going to be in. Like they're going to be in the Big 12 championship game, probably in the playoff. But win the national championship, no. I mean, we started the season. I thought there was two clear teams in Georgia and Ohio State, just like everybody else. And then I thought I thought Texas and Alabama were the next two. And I thought Alabama and Texas probably needed a little bit more help from a depth standpoint. Like Alabama, I think the reason you look at them and you say, can they stay healthy? Because they're not deep like they used to be. They used to have so many kids and so much depth that you could pour in. And now a lot of those guys left. Did you replace them? Yes. But you replaced them with not as talented of guys. And so that's what I wonder about. But man, oh man, I'm going to go like this in my head. I'm going to go, I love what I'm seeing from Clemson. I would put Clemson as I love their offense all of the sudden, and I love their potential. And everybody's going to go, well, it's App State, and they played NC State, who stinks. Well, I just love that they come out and we're ripping the football now, and we're running the football with the quarterback. I mean, Klubnik needs to run the football. He's a great athlete. Like he's a guy that he played in high school and he played supersonic, fast pace. I think you need to do that with him more and trust him to take shots down the field. But no, Miami, I wish you would have given me Miami. I would have taken Miami in a heartbeat.
Miami, they can play, dude. I'm glad you're on the board with them. Like, I love that.
I think you were big on them before the season, weren't you?
Yeah, I'm really high on them. Like, I just watch them and like just looking at their personnel and like looking at their additions. I just felt like Mario did a really smart job of getting guys that they had to have that could really, really improve a position of weakness, or maybe not a position of weakness. That seems harsh. Every guy they brought in made what they had better. You know what I mean? They didn't just bring guys in for the sake of bringing guys in or adding depth. Like, they brought in guys for a reason, and they brought in the right guys based on how they're playing right now.
But the problem with Miami was I thought Miami was one of the most talented teams in the ACC last year. Yeah. And there was a theme that kept coming up was they couldn't finish close games. They turned the football over consistently last year on offense in big games, and the coaching there was mistakes that were made that I thought were controllable. So it'll be interesting to watch them and how much Mario continues to change the culture. I think Cam does that right away. Like you watch him and he's like, I mean, you watch him play football and he's like, I got this. I got the swag. I know the clock. We're running right here. Like, but I do think when you watch Miami, their lines of scrimmage are incredibly physical, incredibly big. You're right. They brought in guys with depth. They brought in quarterback. They brought in running back. They brought in defensive line. They brought in secondary. They brought in pieces that they needed. So in Miami, dude, they play Louisville. Like, yeah. The rest of the way they play Louisville. I'm going to be so interested to see how all this shakes out because there's going to be a lot of one-loss teams at the end of the season that didn't play near the schedule of some of these teams, and they're going to have to make some decisions with the one loss versus the two losses that I think are going to be severely unpopular, and it's going to piss a lot of people off. But if you look at people that are going to play the other person's schedule and you said, how do you think they would do? And if you look at their track record and you look at what they've done, you got to say they would lose some games. So it's going to be fun with all the teams still. And then by the way, outside the Power Four, like that's actually kind of fun. I still think Boise State with that great loss to Oregon is going to be very much in play, and a running back that's a freaking stud, Genty. I mean, he's an animal. So there's a lot of fun things still left on the schedule for all of us to enjoy.
No doubt. A couple more before we get you out of here. Big game this weekend that I think is kind of flying under the radar a bit. Louisville is at Notre Dame. We all know what happened last year when Notre Dame went to Louisville. Louisville just ran them out of the gym there at night in what was an insane environment. Well, now Marcus Freeman has a chance for revenge. I've seen him play with revenge on mind. It's been pretty good in the past. CSC from last year. They're coming to South Bend, and I think Louisville's real, but I don't think they've been tested. So I think all the pressure's on Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman's already had one big letdown this year in Northern Illinois. What if it happens again?
If it happens again, at least this time isn't like Northern Illinois. Like Louisville's a good team. Louisville's a top really 20 team. Louisville, here's what I see when I see Louisville, and I'm not taking shots. I see a lot of good. I don't see a lot of great. Like, I think they're a team that's good, but their margins aren't great. You know, Tyler Shuck's throwing the football down the field, making plays. They're blocking kicks and returning them. Like, they're good on defense. They're good on offense. Brian Brom, you know, he's one of the best play callers in all of college football. Like, nobody has a knack for trick plays more than him. And he uses great pro concepts to attack secondaries. I mean, he just kills you and lights you up in the secondary. So I think they're good. They're experienced. If they win, it's a different conversation. If Notre Dame loses, guess what? You're gone. Like, there is no shot.
It's over, right? Like, they can't make the playoff then. Like,
you can't tell me Notre Dame with their schedule, if they have two losses, one to NIU, which lost this past weekend, by the way, one to NIU, and you're going to have nothing on your schedule that you can point to. There's no conference championship game. Like, listen, Notre Dame has an advantage with no conference championship game getting into the playoffs, but they're also never going to get a bye. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, but they got to win to take care of their chances to be in that mix. Louisville's really good. Let me ask you a question. Notre Dame's passing offense, like, where is it? Like, I don't.
On a scale of Michigan to Mike Leach, they're a lot closer to Michigan last week than they are to Mike Leach. That's for sure.
A little better than Michigan. I'll give them a little bit better.
Definitely a little better than Michigan.
A little better. And here's the thing. I like Riley. He's big and strong. But his number one thing has to be running the football, and it needs to be RPOs. It needs to be screens, because I don't think they're elite at wide receiver by any stretch either, or have great guys that are going to win outside. So how do you alleviate that burden? Here's the one thing we know: they're going to play great defense, though. Like, they play really, really good defense. NIU, they gave up 17, right? Like, and they gave up a big long play. If they don't give up explosive play, it might be different, but Notre Dame's got a big weekend ahead, because if they win this one, they'll stay in the mix and make the committee make a tough decision at the end of the year, where they're going to look at their resume, and Louisville will probably be a two-loss team at least by that point, and they're going to point to their schedule and say, where are the wins that really mattered for this football team to get in the college football playoff?
Yeah, I think that game's going to be super low scoring. I think Notre Dame's got an amazing defense, but I think D-line at Louisville's a very underrated group. We'll see. I think they're going to have to run the ball. that's their pathway to victory, because I don't think Notre Dame likes the matchup they're going to have with their wideouts against those corners Louisville has, because those guys are pretty good. Last one here before we kind of get you out of here. Looking at just the state of kind of Big Ten, SEC conversation and natural. I mean, the superiority conversation. Like, I'm watching Big Noon Fox the other day, and I hear Urban Meyer say 7 SEC teams should be in the playoff. Of course, Fox didn't like that, and it got back to being like 4 or 5, according to Rob Stone. But then you look at the Big Ten, and I'm like, I still think there's at least 3, maybe 4 that are probably going to be in. I don't know. I think Clemson's coming. I think Miami's in. I think it's going to be hard to envision the Big 12 getting 2. I think they can get – they're obviously getting 1. Can they get 2? I don't know. So when we fast forward to season's end, Davey, how many teams from each league will make the college football playoff?
Jeez. Well, we're guaranteed to take 1 off the table. So there's 11 spots. And Notre Dame could have taken 1 off the table. I'm not trusting Notre Dame to take another one off the table. So now you got to go with the other ones. Miami's getting in.
So you got G5 in.
Yeah.
All right.
I got Miami.
No Notre Dame.
Huh?
No Notre Dame right now?
No Notre Dame.
All right. Sounds
I got
good. Miami, ACC.
Yes. And then you got Ohio State. I think
10.
you have at least 1 more from the Big Ten, maybe 2. I mean, I think Oregon and Penn State could make it. Penn State's schedule is pretty great, by the way. Both of those schedules are really good with who they avoid in the Big Ten and don't have to play with each other, with USC. Like, the best teams in that league, they don't have to play. So I'm going to give 3 from the Big Ten because I think that's got to happen. Like, I get
3. That's it. Well, no SC then. You don't think SC gets in?
I don't think SC gets in.
Okay.
And then you got SEC. You got Georgia, Alabama, Texas. You're doing the math. I see. Thank God on your fingers.
Ole Miss.
Ole Miss with their schedule, man, like Ole Miss or Missouri. I'm going to give one of the 2
Ole
the
Miss
mix.
or Missouri. So we'll take 2 teams, but 1 spot. Fair enough.
So now we got 2 left.
Tennessee.
Dude, I like Tennessee. If Tennessee if Tennessee has 2 good losses, I mean, I've got to put them in the game. If they lost at Alabama, or if they lost at home to Alabama and lost at Georgia in good games, I think Tennessee should be in the playoffs. Like, that's just the way it should work. And then we got one other. We got Utah.
All right, so you got 5. So right now you got 5 SEC.
Yeah, 5 SEC is where I'm sticking with. I'm not going anymore.
I think that's about right. Like, I think the committee's going to have a hard time justifying more than 5. All right, so I think you get 5 from the SEC. You might get 6. Just depends on what happens elsewhere. You got 3 from the Big Ten right now. That takes us to 8. You got a G5 that's in. You have Miami that's in. That's at 10. So you have a Big 12 champ. I'm assuming that's Utah. And then you have 1 more.
Jeez. And here's the thing I think that will be interesting about that. I don't think they're going to sit there with the Big Ten and the SEC and their schedules. I don't think they're going to be like I don't know if I think they'll be looking outside for other teams. Like, how do they measure up against the SEC and the Big Ten and their schedules and all of those teams that are ranked? Like Missouri, they've been up and down like this, and I haven't loved what I've seen from Missouri yet. I don't know who it is. Like, you give me the next one. You give me the last one.
Well, my thing would be Clemson. Just I'll give you a couple of like Clemson.
They're not going to lose again, probably.
They can score. Like, Clemson can score. I am a little concerned about their defense. Like, I for the first time maybe since I've been doing this, I don't think their defense is great. I think they're good. I think they're fine. I just don't know if they're great. It's kind of like back to the seesaw battle. Like, now the offense is rolling, so the defense lets off. It's like, okay, I don't know why that happens.
Do you trust the offense, or because you did see him against Georgia and you go, wow, that was really ugly. Like, couldn't run the football, club that looked very average. And that's one thing they'll go, okay, I got to weigh that into concern too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that their offense will be legit. Like, I think those receivers are only going to get better. That the O-line just kind of found a little bit of a niche. I think Klubnik is playing super confident right now. And I don't know what defense is going to scare them to death. Like, what defense is going to give them a lot of fits prior to when they play against Miami in the ACC championship game, assuming they get there. I just don't know who that is. Is it Louisville at home? Like, that to me,
Death Valley, they don't lose very often, man. Like, that's
twice. twice.
As soon as NC State scored, or as soon as they scored on NC State 14-0, you're like, with that crowd, actually when it was 7-0 and he went 54 running the ball, you're like, you don't want to rile that cage. Like those guys, CLEMSONs going nuts, and you're going nuts, and I'm texting you during the game.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I can't sell you on anybody else. I can't sell you on I can't sell you on Rutgers. Not yet. You're not quite there yet with the Scarlet Knights.
Are you?
How could you not be? You have to be. I'm looking at. I can't sell you on BYU. That's too soon. I just have a hard time thinking the Big 12 is going to cannibalize itself. I have a hard time seeing that. So I think that last team, I think you have 5 from the SEC, 4 from the Big 10, either 4 from the Big 10. I think winner of SC Notre Dame goes to the playoff. Like that's how I'm going to operate right now. SC's they're in, or Notre Dame gets in. So you get 5 from the SEC, 3 from the Big 10 for sure, possibly 4 if SC wins and takes care of their business. If SC loses to Notre Dame, then Notre Dame's in there. Then you have 1 from the SEC, 1 from the ACC, 1 from the Big 12, and 1 from the G5. So I think it's tough, and it'll be fascinating to see where we're at.
I'm confused, but can you imagine what's this going to do? Like when we're having this debate and they're having that debate, and then you have the conference championships at the end of the year, a team that has to play an extra game for no apparent reason whatsoever, except for you had a good record, and you got other people sitting there with the same record, and then all of a sudden one's out because they played an extra game and the other one's in, and there'll always be ticked off people. So it'll be fun. It'll be great.
Yeah, I'm sure people will definitely keep a cooler head, just like last year. Davey, really appreciate it, man. It's always so good to visit with you. Always love your perspective on ball. And if you guys are enjoying what you're hearing from Dave, he's as good as he's ever been on his podcast, David Pollack, College Football. You can check him out on YouTube and the podcast as well. Davey, appreciate you, buddy. And roll Tide this weekend, my friend.
Appreciate you, brother. Go Dogs.
Another thing we like to do on the show here is our top 4 in the Power 4, which is a pretty fun way of kind of diving into the Power 4 leagues and tell you how we kind of think things are shaking out right now. We'll start in the Southeastern Conference. The number 1 team in the SEC, the Texas Longhorns, are also number 1 in the AP poll. They have the best win in college football. Michigan is the highest ranked 1-loss team. Texas not only beat Michigan, but they beat them convincingly in their house. At number 2, it's the Georgia Bulldogs. They beat Clemson, and that win is strengthening for Georgia at the moment. At 3, it's Tennessee. Tennessee is bypassed Alabama based on their performance on the road against what I think is a really good Oklahoma team. And then Alabama rounds out the top 4, but could very easily vault into the number 1 spot potentially with a win this week against the Georgia Bulldogs in Tuscaloosa. In the Big 10, it's a little bit more clear-cut for me. Ohio State's number 1, and number 1 by a mile. At number 2, it's Penn State. I like Penn State on offense more than I did a year ago. Still wondering what that defense is going to round into. Yes, the first half against Bowling Green, forgettable performance. I don't think that's who they are, though. I think they're going to be better moving forward, but they have yet to really be tested. They will be here in the coming weeks. At number 3, I'm going Oregon. Still a believer. I do think the performance against Oregon State was much better, but the first 2 weeks against Boise and then their week 1 opponent was not great offensively or defensively, but I think their best football is in front of them. Number 4, I'm moving Michigan in there. I can't put SC in there when they lost to Michigan. Michigan won the head-to-head. Therefore, they're in the top 4. They're in the Big 10. In the ACC, this one also pretty cut and dry. I think Miami is by a wide margin the best team in the ACC. At number 2, it's Clemson. They've zoomed past undefeated Louisville and Pitt because I think Clemson's ceiling is outrageously high, especially with what they're doing right now on offense. At number 3, it's Louisville. Number 4, it's Pitt. Louisville will find out what they're made of this weekend when they go on the road to take on the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. Big 12. This one's a little tougher. I know who the number 1 team is. That's Utah. But you get 2, 3, and 4. You can make a case for a bunch of different programs in those final 3 spots. But I'm going BYU. I'm going Iowa State, and I'm going UCF, 2, 3, and 4. That'll do it for us here at Always College Football. Find us on the podcast platform. Like, rate, and subscribe to the podcast platform. And you can find us on the ESPN YouTube channel as well. Subscribe and follow us there as well. For all of us here at ACF, for Mark, Jake, Jack, the other Jack, I'm Greg. We hope you have an awesome day. And remember, it's always college football. Hey guys, it's Greg McElroy. Thanks for watching Always College Football. Make sure you like, rate, and subscribe to ESPN's YouTube channel and wherever you listen to your podcasts.